Good morning. I'm so pleased to see so many happy faces and many of them familiar to me. And I hope that when this is over today, that you will stop to think about what I said and learn a little bit and feel a little bit more in control. I like to start today by talking to you about two important parts of our brain. These are generally not things that the scientists have really looked at, but we all have them. We have a part in our brain that I call the still small voice. Sometimes it gets very big, but it's generally the still small voice, and it drones on in our life, through our life. And that voice is with us when we take our first breath. And that voice is with us when we take our last. And so, one of the things I want you to consider today is to make friends with what's going on the inside. Even if you feel like it's driving you crazy, hopefully I'm going to help you with that today, because we own our brains. We own what goes on in our brains. We use the language to explain what goes on to ourselves from our brain. And that could be very powerful, because if we own our brains, then we will be able to make a shift in a paradigm or change a lens so that we'll feel better when we hear some things that don't make us feel very good. So we have this stream of consciousness, the still small voice. And from the time we're born, before we have language, there are things that are impressed along that. It's almost like a stream. They're impressed along that stream. Some of them are very good and some of them are very bad. And the things that are very bad leave a very deep bruise inside of us. So as we get older, those are the things that pop up. First, we feel about those things and we think, oh, that doesn't feel good. Or however we get our feelings, we don't get to control them. We have our feelings. What we can control, though, is how we think about those feelings. So suppose I'm going to give you the example of a little boy who loves his mom and dad, and he's close to his dad, and he admires his father, and he's playing ball with his father when he's about 4 or 5 years old. And his father said, "Oh, you're so clumsy. You'll never be an athlete." And that little message gets stuck in that stream. It gets stuck in that stream. So when he is among kids, he doesn't want to volunteer. He thinks to himself, well, I'm not a good athlete. My dad said it, I'm not a good athlete. And sometimes we don't even know how the message gets there. And in reality, it's not always important to know how the message gets there, because it's there. It's there because in our mind, we hear it. This little boy heard, I'm just not very good at sports. I'll never be good at sports. I'll never be an athlete, until he gets into junior high school or middle school. And he likes the kids in his class and he gets along well with them. And one of the boys said to him when he's out playing ball one day, "Wow, you're really coordinated. You should go out for the baseball team." And he stops and he hears that message. Dad said I'm not a good athlete. Dad said I'm not coordinated. But Joe, who I really like, and he's my friend, he says I could try out for the baseball team. So there's something wrong with that initial message. There's something wrong with it. We feel it, then we think it, then we say, I'm going to make a different paradigm. I'm going to shift the paradigm. And I'm going to say, the little boy said, I used to be uncoordinated, but I'm good now. I'm very good now. And he has shifted that negative message into a positive message. And that shifting of the paradigm or the lens, it makes his life better. It makes our lives better. And as we're older, we hear old messages. We hear things like, you're just no good at math. You're just no good at math. And we don't understand the power of that message that gets planted into our subconscious or into that stream of consciousness. But we do feel it. And first we have our feelings, then we think about it. And thinking about it, we create new language around it. Would you put that first slide up, please? So here's the guy. He's got these feelings, and then he puts his mind to it. And remember, you own your mind. You own the language in your mind. He puts his mind to it, and he said, hold it. I'm going to change this lens. I'm going to change this paradigm. And he thinks, I used to be that way, but I'm not that way anymore. Now, it would be lovely if this, after we saw the possibilities and changed our thought, if that was all we had to do, it would be just lovely. But those messages, those things that pop up into us, that create the feelings that make us think about stuff, they have been there a while. And if they haven't been there a while, they were a deep cut inside of us. So they keep popping up. And yesterday, when I was talking to my group about this, somebody said, it's like whack-a-mole. I couldn't remember the name of the game, but it pops up all the time. The thought just comes back. You have to say, no, we control our thoughts. You need to say, thank you for being here all these years, but you don't work for me anymore. Let me give you another example. A young girl, she lives in a family that are very high achievers. Her father's very athletic, very handsome. She's very close to her dad. And her dad says to her, you know, you have to stay fit. You have to stay fit. It's just so important. You have to stay fit. Don't be like your mother. She let herself go. Well, that message got stuck in her brain in that still small voice that's always with her and is always going to be with her. So we go inside and she thinks to herself, boy, I better not gain any weight. I better watch it. I better be really careful about this. And she becomes so obsessive about it that she gets into a place of anorexia. She makes herself think, or she makes herself sick because of the way she thinks. But that young girl gets into a program about anorexia. And she said, yeah, I was like that. Yeah, I did that. And she's among other girls. And so she thinks to herself, because we own our brain and we can think inside, geez, that didn't work for me very well. I got to make some adjustments here. So maybe I can make the adjustment like my dad said. It's good to be fit. It's good to be fit and happy. It's good to be fit and healthy. And she changes that thought. She changes the paradigm that she sees life through. The truth is that our thoughts create our life. A woman not long ago said to me, you know, I have a good daughter-in-law and I have a bad daughter-in-law. And she proceeded to tell me why the good daughter-in-law was so good and the bad daughter-in-law was so bad. Now, I looked at this and I could see that she had created a lens to look through both people. It wasn't the same lens. She looked more critically at the daughter-in-law she had decided wasn't very good. And it caused her pain. It caused her to feel unease. It caused her not to be happy in the world. And why I'm telling you all this is that I want you to be happier in the world. I wanted her to be happier in the world. So we started talking about that lens. Why was the good daughter-in-law so good and the bad daughter-in-law so bad? What was the difference? Well, and she had all kinds of reasons. But those reasons were about the daughter-in-law, not about how she thought about them. And her language came out of her thinking, that came out of her feelings. And I said to her, what would it look like if you said, just, I have two daughter-in-laws? What would that look like? Well, they're so different. I said, yeah, your kids are probably different too. Would you feel better eventually if you learned that new way to think about it? Because the lens that she was using was not doing her any good. So she needed to shift the paradigm and take control of what goes on in our minds. One of the things I want to talk to you about is that I think that everybody should be very aware that they can shift things in their mind, but also our minds play tricks on us. We assume that what's coming from our mind is correct, and we know, we just know, we know. Well, we don't always know. And part of being present and in the moment and living right now is to say to yourself, wait a minute, when something pops up, is this accurate? Is this accurate for me? Is it doing me any good? And if it's not, you got to start the project. And if you do the project, if you do take things from that stream of consciousness, that still small voice, and you say, wait a minute, this is popping up and I don't feel good about it. For instance, not long ago, I started a group with a friend of mine. It was called Getting Unstuck. And the people in the group were very hesitant about going out into the world, excuse me, because of the pandemic. They were looking through a lens of fear, which we all do at different times for different things. That fear caused them a great deal of stress. So in the group, what we wanted to do was allow them to discuss that, to look at it and say, okay, 2 years ago, I was really nervous because I didn't have enough information, but it's 2 years later now. I have more information. There are medical solutions to if I do get the COVID. Things are doing much better. So they have more information now to look at that paradigm they had about, I have to stay safe, I have to stay home. It's not that they didn't mind or that they minded staying home. Most of the people said I found a new comfort in staying home. I hadn't done that. When we moved to the villages, we try one thing after another, and because we want to get it all in. But eventually what happens is that we realize that we prefer some things to the other things, and we shift the paradigm. We don't do everything all at one time, or we don't go to the other extreme and be afraid to go out in the world. If you're willing to do this, you really need to pat yourself on the back, because 80% of the world is running on unconscious. They run their world on habit. What I did yesterday, I'm going to continue to do today, and therefore I'm not thinking much about it. And they run their mind on the conclusions that were in them. And so they're not living in the present tense. They're not experiencing the joy of taking control of your own life from the inside out. But you have to listen to that voice. And I know that you all have it. I'm sure that you've all been in the grocery store or in the bank line and looked around and had things going on in your mind about what you were thinking about other people. That's the stream. And generally, when it's in your head and it's not out of your mouth, you're not hurting anyone. So you're okay. And it can be very interesting. Once you realize that something is hard for you or something is holding you back, you need to first feel your feelings. How do I feel? Am I agitated? Am I agitated over this? Am I mad at this? Am I sad that I don't understand? Am I feeling lonely because I don't think anybody else thinks like I do? Am I feeling afraid? Feel the feelings. We don't have a choice of our feelings. They just come up for us. Lots of people try to hide them, and when you hide them, they pop out sideways. It's the old thing where, the man comes home and he's mad at his wife, so he kicks the cat. It's just how we make things harder in our lives by not looking at them clearly face on. So once we have the feelings, then who owns our mind? We own our minds. And we say, you know, this isn't doing me any good. I need to really look at this. I need to look at this. And you notice there's no place in there for excuses because it doesn't work. Excuses just keep you where you are. So you look at it and you think, gosh, you know, I'm just afraid to go out. I'm afraid to go out. There's too many things, too many variables, too many things I don't know about. Well, then you say to yourself, I'm an adult now. How can I manage the variables? And you decide after you have the feeling of fear, after you wonder about why is this so for you, then you shift the paradigm. And that creates a more joyful, more comfortable stream of consciousness, a joyful, more comfortable way for us to make friends with that still small voice. It's going to be with us forever, and it knows everything. And for the most part, it doesn't complain much. Just every now and then things pop up. There's originally a thought about this started with a guy named Eric Burns. He wrote about something called transactional analysis, TA. Some of you may have heard it. And in transactional analysis, he had three people. He had a child, he had an adult, and he had, I can't remember. He had a child, an adult, and a critical parent. And those three were things that pop up, he said, in our mind. And based on those, we have roles that we play when we meet other people. If we're playing a role, we're not authentic. We're not who we really are. And at our age, I think it's time to be who we really are. With all the warts and all the bumps, most of us are just trying to be in this world and make it a little better, love our families, pay our taxes, do what we have to do. But the stuff pops up. And you didn't always put it in yourself. Most of the time you didn't. And Burns says that stuff that pops up that's negative, that's a critical parent. But we're adults. We can go back to that little kid and say, wait a minute, that was true then. You were afraid then, but you don't have to be afraid now because I'm an adult and I can decide in my mind that things are going to be different. I don't want to say at all that this is easy. And I learned how hard it was by listening to the people in my group that I talked about. They'd say, oh, I have every intention. I was thinking I was going to do this. I was getting ready and couldn't do it. Well, that's all right. Because then you have more information to look at to adjust the paradigm, to just make that lens more clear. What's important about dealing with life every day is enjoying it in present tense. Now, I don't know about you, but I have found myself when I worked being 20 miles from home and realizing that I didn't know a thing. I didn't think of a thing. I was driving the car. I was unconscious to the reality of what was going on. Our brains do that for us, and they do it for several reasons. One of the reasons is to relax our brain. Another one is to protect us. But when something pops up, when you hear that inner voice, I feel, and I don't have any proof of this, but I believe it's time for you to deal with it. You wouldn't hear it as much as you're hearing it if it wasn't time to deal with it. Now, sometimes people, have good friends that they can bounce this stuff off of. And that makes it easier, and it makes for more intimacy in a friendship or in your personal relationships. But what I want to express to you is that it's an inside job. They can't do it for you. They can encourage you. They can hope that you're going to do the best job that you can, but you have to do the work. And as adults, the reward has to be a more comfortable way of living. So what I wanted to tell you today in a kind of a nutshell is that we keep hearing this voice on and off in our minds all the time. I have decided that for me, I need to make friends with that voice because he or she or it or however I hear it, it's with me all the time. Some of us fight it. Some of us don't want to think about it, don't want to hear it, but it's part of who we are. And it gives us the opportunity to become more of what we are and better of what we are if we trust it, if we listen to it and we trust there's something going on here. First, I need to have my feelings over it. How am I feeling? Am I scared? Am I angry? Then, and just allow those feelings. Then I have to examine it because that's tricky. Sometimes those bruises are way deep and down in there and you don't know how it got there or who said it or why it's so. So you have to look at it clearly as an adult and say, is this good for me? Is this working for me? And if it is not working for me, then me, the inside of me, my brain, I can make a new paradigm. I can make a new visual, a lens to see that through so that my life is easier. And shifting the paradigm makes us feel powerful in our own lives because we're taking control of it. It makes us more joyful because those things don't pop up as much, although there's a lot of work when they start popping up. And it gives us the opportunity to be more of who we are. So I hope that you understand what I'm trying to tell you. And I hope that you'll think about it and make friends and be conscious. We want to be conscious in the world today. We want to see and listen and feel and look and know what's going on in our own minds. It will make us all better and happier people. Thank you very much.
Terry, that was fantastic. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I wanted to ask you, I was wondering if sometimes it makes sense to journal some of these thoughts, because sometimes I know with me, I'm not ready to deal with it, or I don't have the energy to deal with it. And sometimes when they pop up, if you put it in a journal and maybe you see a pattern.
Part of what I missed in telling you was that there are techniques that we can deal with these issues. And one of them is writing them down. I have found, however, in my journaling, if I journal, I hardly ever go back myself. But if you write something down and it's still part of your thinking, you're interfering with what's going on, I suggest putting it in an envelope and burying it or burning it, or another suggestion, because it is like whack-a-mole. This stuff's going to pop back up. And when it pops back up, you need different techniques. Writing, journaling is an excellent one. Another thing that Lisa mentioned was what I consider consequence rehearsal. What's the best thing that can happen? What's the worst thing that can happen? Once I've determined what I'm going to shift my paradigm to. That keeps you in a position of feeling in control. But sometimes it keeps popping up. So I do silly things like I say in my mind, shut up. Or I say, I'm making you into a little ant in my mind, and I step on it. I mean, we have to be creative about this so that you know that you're in control. And boy, we came up with some really good ones. There's some really fun things to do. I'm so glad you mentioned that, Lisa, because we do need words to say. Sometimes, for instance, with the money issue, I had a second marriage and I was very nervous about, we went into an attorney to make a will, or a trust. And I was just so nervous because I had one child and he had 2 children. And I didn't know how it was going to go because we didn't talk about it before, because it was so hard to talk about. It's not an easy issue, but it was in my mind and it popped up. I was so very nervous, but I paid attention and I let my husband lead. And thank God he led just where I wanted him to go, and there wasn't a struggle. But I made myself sick over worrying about it before it happened. And if I had remembered this technique, or I had learned this technique properly, I could have said, oh, this is getting to me. What am I going to do? What am I going to say? And look at the consequences. What might happen? What might not happen? And I found it difficult to say the words, like, this is together, we have a new marriage and we need to, work this out together. And I'm nervous because I only have one daughter. That would have made things so much easier, but I couldn't get those words out. Now, I think with this technique, I'm more aware of what the feelings are and what my thoughts are. And if I can't get it done right away, I can write it down. And if it still pops up like the whack-a-mole, I can rip it up. I can make it a little ant and stamp on it. I can be the judge of me and I can bang it with my gavel. We can create all kinds of crazy things that nobody has to know about but us. But they'll work. They'll make you laugh at yourself and say, oh, I can do this. Are there any more questions? That was a great, thank you so much for that.
I think you're right in when you are successful in the question, when you ask the questions and you're willing to look at difficult issues, you become empowered to maybe tackle the next one, right? You have a success behind you, but it's hard. It's hard to change what's in your mind. And sometimes, again, facing those difficult things that are going on in your head, everybody wants to be liked, everybody wants to be loved, everybody wants to have a place, and sometimes we have those little voices inside. Well, what if I'm not going to be successful? Or what if I'm, not enough, right? So how do you change those tiny little voices, right?
You just decide they're in my head. I own them. They're in my head. They're going to be, and I'm going to be in charge of them. We're going to take things a little differently this way. And it really is empowering. So many people are living their lives without examining why they're unhappy. And of course, everybody may need some therapy at one time or another, but this is something you do for yourself. It's a gift for yourself. It's not much different than what you do when you talk to somebody, when you do talk therapy. But in talk therapy, they give you words to say. And, even as adults, we get hurt. We get hit every now and then. A friend of mine said something very hurtful to me the other day, and I didn't say back, oh, that was hurtful. I was so shocked by it, I didn't know what to say, but it stayed with me. And so I had to look at it and say, what really makes you feel bad? Well, maybe she's true. Maybe she's right. But maybe she's wrong. And so I had to figure out words that when the time is right, I'm going to say to her, I got to point this out because it's in the way of our friendship right now. And I'm going to just tell you what I feel and what I think. And it's all I want you to do is think and feel about it back. If she wants to apologize, fine, but I just want her to know what she did. That gives me power. I can't control her behavior, but I can control mine. The question that you need to ask yourself, and that thing that keeps popping up, is this good for me? This friendship, these things that happen, is this good for me? And you will know it's not. One of the exercises we did in our group was we talked about friends and acquaintances. And in the villages, when you first move in, everybody's so nice. It's like so much fun. Everybody's friendly and stuff. But as time goes on, you will find your own level. You will find people that are more like the way that you are, that you're more comfortable with. And if you're offended by those people, one of the things that you need to understand is the bruise is deep. It's not just about that person saying that to you. It's about that thing in the stream that got stuck in there that isn't healthy for you. And it makes you feel stupid, or makes you feel like, did I miss what she said? Or did she mean what she said? We doubt ourselves. And we really need to examine it so that we don't doubt ourselves. I was very happy to hear one of our people in the group say that we did this exercise where we said, okay, now make a list of your friends and acquaintances. And don't just make a list of everybody that you know that you like. Then think about it. Think about your own personal definition for a friend. And then say, who really are my friends in this group and who are my acquaintances? And acquaintances are wonderful to have. We can't discount that. But sometimes acquaintances, if we spend so much time with them, we're not spending time with the friends that could make us feel better. So once they separated their friends and acquaintances, the question that we asked is, who would you invite into your house to sit around your kitchen table? And that's a whole different level of understanding of what it means to be a friend. It's much more intimate. And that decision making, that figuring that out, that's a very healthy part of becoming empowered as an adult. They don't ever have to know you've done this, but you have figured out that there's a levels of friendship. You can't get what you want from just one person in this life. So it's kind of fun to have friends that you play sports with and friends that you love to karaoke with, or, that's how life is. But we are at an age where we're pretty clear on what's good for us and what's not. And when we are with people that are not good for us, or we walk away thinking, I don't know, maybe they didn't like me. Maybe maybe this isn't for me. It's probably not. I mean, it's because we're healthy human beings thinking about this stuff. The way that I would address it, the way that I would look at it, is that all of us, we have inside of us that little child that was there when we were born and that had feelings when they were young. And then we have inside of us that adolescent that oftentimes we go back to memories of. And we have an adult, a healthy adult. And when somebody hurts us and it's very painful and we can't go back, the bruise is very deep. And we have to say to ourselves, try to picture, were you really young when you heard this? Because the adult in you has to say, you were just a little kid. Little kids don't know everything. When somebody first told you this, you didn't know how to handle it, but you're an adult now. And it doesn't have to have power over you. You can say to yourself, boy, that was a stupid thing I did. Or, no, I don't agree. I'm living the life I think is important. If they're not part of it, that's okay, but it's not good for me. I feel strongly that you don't have to know where all of those messages come from, because we get sidetracked by that. We just need to know they're there and they're very deep. When we are hurt, women have to ask ourselves, what does that mean? Because very often women have a tendency to first be hurt. If they stay with it, then they start feeling angry, confused, other feelings. But women, it's easy to be hurt. And men, it's easy to be angry. That's just the place we go to first. So sit with that hurt and say, is this old? Am I feeling this? Is this something I felt before? And if it's old, you've got to parent yourself. You've got to be that adult that loves that little kid or loves that adolescent that this happened to and says, it's okay. You got through that. It's past. If you can't go back, that's good. Goodbye. But honor that the adult in us has the strength to take care of those things, to clear out those bruises.